The rain falls mercilessly on a tree-lined suburban street. Elegant homes with manicured lawns stand like silent witnesses to the scene unfolding before one particular residence. A man in his early 40s stands motionless on the sidewalk, rainwater streaming down his face, mixing with what might be tears. His hands rest protectively on the shoulders of two children. Twins, a boy and a girl, no more than 10 years old. Moving men shuttle boxes from the house to a waiting truck. The front door is held open by an elegant woman in her 60s, dressed in expensive clothes that seem impervious to the downpour. Her face is a mask of cold determination. Every parent's worst nightmare is losing their spouse and having to raise their children alone. But imagine being thrown out of your home by your own family just weeks after burying your wife. That's exactly what happened to Alexander Reed. Standing in the rain with his 10-year-old twins, Oliver and Sophia, he watched his wealthy in-laws pack their few belongings into boxes. "You never belonged here anyway," Alexandra Blackwood said coldly. Alex had nowhere to go except a rundown house on the wrong side of town. He worked 3 jobs just to keep food on the table while his children asked when they could go home. What Alex didn't know was that his late wife Emma had left him something that would change everything. A lawyer was searching for him with news about a $200 million inheritance. But would this money heal the pain of rejection or teach him what family really means? Before we continue this extraordinary journey, tell us where you're watching from. And if this story touches your heart, make sure you're subscribed. Tomorrow, I've saved something extra special for you. Alexander Reed had never thought much about money until he didn't have any. Sitting on the front steps of the dilapidated house on Oak Street, watching paint peel from the shutters in long, deliberate strips, he turned Emma's wedding ring over and over between his fingers. The simple gold band caught the afternoon light, reflecting memories of a time when love seemed enough to conquer anything. They had met at the Metropolitan Museum of Art 6 years ago. Alex was there researching for an article on war paintings for the history journal he contributed to alongside his teaching position. Emma was sketching visitors, her blonde hair falling like a curtain across her face as she worked. When she looked up at his approach, her green eyes held a warmth that made him forget whatever clever opening line he'd prepared. "You're blocking my view of the soldier's face. I'm sorry. I was just admiring how you've captured the light in the painting." "I wasn't painting the artwork. I was painting you looking at it. You stood there for 20 minutes. What were you seeing that took so long?" That was Emma. Direct but never harsh. Curious about everything and everyone. She came from the kind of family that appeared in the society pages of newspapers, but she wore faded jeans and paint-stained sweaters to galleries. Her father, William Blackwood, owned half the commercial real estate in the city. Her mother, Alexandra, traced her lineage back to banking pioneers and spoke in the clipped tones of someone who had never questioned her place in the world. Alex's family ran a small bookstore in a neighboring town. His father worked with his hands, knew the names of every customer, and believed that a man's worth was measured by his integrity rather than his bank account. When Alex brought Emma home for the first time, his parents welcomed her with the kind of warmth that money couldn't buy. When Emma brought Alex to meet the Blackwoods, the reception was decidedly cooler. Teaching is a noble profession. William Blackwood's tone made clear it was anything but. The dining room of the Blackwood mansion stretched around them, the table long enough to seat 20, though only 4 were present. Crystal glasses caught the light from the chandelier overhead, refracting it across the white tablecloth like scattered diamonds. Of course, positions at prestigious universities pay considerably more than public ones. Alex wants to make a difference in the community. He believes education should be accessible to everyone. Emma's hand found his under the table, a small act of rebellion against the judgment flowing from her parents. How idealistic. Alexandra Blackwood's smile was as cold as the silver serving dishes arranged before them. Despite their disapproval, Emma had chosen Alex. They were married in a small ceremony in the garden of the Blackwood estate, though Alexandra made it clear she would have preferred something grander. Emma wore her grandmother's dress, not because she couldn't afford something new, but because she loved the story behind it. Her grandmother had eloped during the Depression, choosing love over social expectations. "She was my inspiration. She taught me that real wealth has nothing to do with money." Emma told Alex on their wedding night, sitting on the edge of their hotel bed, her grandmother's lace veil still pinned in her hair. The twins arrived 2 years later. Oliver with Alex's analytical mind and protective instincts. Sophia with Emma's artistic soul and thoughtful nature. They lived happily in a beautiful brownstone near the university where Alex taught. Emma worked part-time at a local art gallery, more for the joy of it than necessity. She had access to her trust fund, but they rarely touched it except for emergencies. I want the children to understand the value of things. I don't want them to grow up thinking money solves everything, Emma would say when Alex suggested they could afford something nicer. The Blackwoods visited occasionally, always with subtle criticism disguised as concern. The house wasn't prestigious enough. Alex's position wasn't advancing quickly enough. The children should be in private school. Emma deflected their comments with grace, but Alex could see the strain it caused her. When the twins were 8, Emma found the tumor. She said nothing for weeks, hoping it would disappear, but Alex noticed her distraction during their evening walks through the neighborhood. He noticed how she held her left arm differently, how she paused longer than usual when climbing stairs. "It's probably nothing," she said when she finally told him about the doctor's appointment. It wasn't nothing. The diagnosis was aggressive brain cancer, and despite the best medical care money could buy, the prognosis was grim. Emma faced the treatments with the same quiet courage she brought to everything else. She made lists, instructions for Alex about the children's routines, their likes and dislikes, their fears and dreams. Oliver needs logic when he's upset. Explain the things clearly, and he'll process it better. Sophia will retreat into her art before she can talk about her feelings. Let her draw it out. During those long months of treatment, the Blackwoods made their opinions clear. They wanted Emma to come home to the estate where she could be properly cared for. They wanted the children to attend Westfield Academy, their alma mater. They wanted Alex to accept a position at Williams' company, something with more security and prestige. "They mean well," Emma said after a particularly tense visit from her mother. "Do they?" Alex asked gently. Emma was quiet for a long time, staring out the window at the small gardens she had planted when they first moved in. "I think they're afraid that when I'm gone, they'll lose the children too. They won't lose them. We're family." Emma looked at him then, and something flickered in her expression. A sadness he couldn't quite interpret. "Promise me something, Alex. Promise me you'll remember that you're enough. Just as you're enough," he promised, though he didn't understand why she seemed so worried about it. Emma's health declined rapidly in the final months. She spent hours in her study, writing letters and making phone calls she wouldn't discuss. Alex assumed she was handling her affairs, ensuring the children's education funds were properly managed. He was focused on being present for every moment they had left, treasuring the quiet conversations and gentle touches that would soon be memories. The day she died, holding his hand while the twins slept curled against her hospital bed, Emma's last words were about the children. "Take care of them. Help them remember that love is the only thing that lasts." The funeral was held at St. Mary's Episcopal Church, where the Blackwood family had attended for generations. Alexandra took charge of the arrangements, organizing a service that reflected the family's social standing more than Emma's humble nature. Alex sat in the front pew with Oliver and Sophia, watching colleagues and acquaintances file past the ornate casket, and felt utterly alone despite the crowd. In the weeks that followed, the Blackwoods began their campaign of gentle pressure. They visited daily, bringing elaborate meals the children barely touched and suggestions about practical arrangements. The house was too full of memories. The children needed stability. Alex needed support raising them alone. "We're family," Alexandra would say, her hand resting possessively on Sophia's shoulder. "We want what's best for everyone." Alex tried to be gracious. They were grieving too, and he understood their desire to feel useful, but their version of help felt increasingly like control. They criticized his parenting choices, his financial decisions, his plans for the children's future. When he mentioned keeping the twins in public school, William made calls to private institutions without consulting him. "We can afford to give them advantages," Alexandra argued when Alex protested. Emma would have wanted that. Emma wanted them to have a normal childhood. She said so many times. Alex's voice remained steady, though his hands clenched into fists at his sides. Emma was sick. Alexandra's voice gentled in a way that felt condescending. She wasn't thinking clearly toward the end. That night, Alex found Emma's journal in her desk drawer. Her handwriting grew shakier as the entries progressed, but her thoughts remained clear and purposeful. She wrote about her love for him, her hopes for the children, and her growing concern about her parents' intentions. They see Alex as temporary. They think grief will make him more pliable, more willing to accept their version of what's best. They don't understand that his strength comes from his principles, not his circumstances. I pray he remembers who he is when they try to change him. Reading those words, Alex felt Emma's presence as clearly as if she were sitting beside him. She had known this would happen. She had tried to prepare him, but he had been too focused on losing her to hear the warning. The final confrontation came on a gray October morning, 6 weeks after the funeral. Alex was making breakfast when he heard the moving truck in the driveway. Through the kitchen window, he watched Alexandra directing workers toward the house. "What's happening?" Sophia asked, clutching her stuffed rabbit, a gift from Emma on her 8th birthday. "I don't know, sweetheart," Alex said, but his heart was already sinking. Alexandra entered without knocking, her expression set with the kind of determination Alex had learned to fear. "We've made arrangements. The children will be more comfortable at the estate, and you'll have time to figure out your next steps." "My next steps? You can't raise them properly on a teacher's salary," William said, following his wife into the kitchen. The morning light through the window cast harsh shadows across his face, emphasizing the deep lines around his mouth. "Emma's gone, Alexander. The practical realities haven't changed just because we're all grieving." Sophia began to cry quietly, and Oliver moved protectively to his sister's side. Alex knelt to their level, his hands steady despite the rage building in his chest. "Go pack some clothes. We're going to stay somewhere else for a while." "You don't understand." Alexandra's voice rose slightly, her composure cracking. "This isn't a request. The house belongs to the family trust. Emma lived here at our discretion, and that arrangement died with her." The words hit Alex like a physical blow. In all their years together, Emma had never mentioned that the house wasn't truly theirs. She had paid the bills, handled the finances, protected him from the details that would have made him feel like a charity case. 1 week. William said, not unkindly, but with the finality of someone accustomed to being obeyed. "That should be enough time to find somewhere appropriate." They left Alex alone with the twins and the workers, who began systematically packing their lives into boxes. Sophia sat on her bed, drawing furiously in her sketchbook while tears ran down her cheeks. Oliver helped pack with the mechanical efficiency of someone in shock. "Are we going to live with Grandma and Grandpa?" Sophia asked, her voice small and uncertain. Alex looked at his daughter's hopeful face and felt something break inside him. "No, sweetheart. We're going to find our own place." "But where?" He didn't have an answer. Emma's death had left him unprepared for practical challenges that seemed insurmountable. His professor's salary could cover rent and basic expenses, but he had no savings for deposits or moving costs. The life insurance policy would help, but it was tied up in probate. A knock at the door interrupted his thoughts. Alex opened it to find James Chen, his colleague from the history department, standing on the porch with a thermos of coffee in an envelope. James was in his 70s, a distinguished professor emeritus who had mentored Alex when he first joined the faculty. His weathered face showed concern beneath his usual stoic expression. "Emma contacted me 2 months ago. She asked me to give you this if certain circumstances arose. I believe those circumstances have arrived." The envelope contained a key and an address on Oak Street. "There's a house. The owner's looking for someone responsible to rent it cheap in exchange for fixing it up. It's not much, but it's got good bones and a yard for the children." Alex stared at the offering, overwhelmed by the realization that Emma had anticipated this moment. Why would she come to you with this? James's expression softened, the lines around his eyes deepening with an old sorrow. "Because 30 years ago, I lost my wife to cancer, and my in-laws tried to take my son. Emma knew I would understand what you might face." Alex felt a rush of gratitude for his wife's foresight, mingled with grief that she had spent her final months preparing for a battle she wouldn't live to fight. "Thank you." The words seemed inadequate for what James was offering. Not just shelter, but understanding. James nodded, his hand briefly gripping Alex's shoulder. "Emma also said to remind you of something when the time came. Sometimes the only family that matters is the one that chooses to love you." As the moving truck pulled away from the house where his children had taken their first steps and lost their first teeth, Alex made a silent promise to Emma. He would prove that her faith in him hadn't been misplaced. He would show the twins that a man's worth wasn't measured by his bank account or his social connections. He would teach them that love indeed was the only thing that lasted. The house on Oak Street stood before them like a question mark, weathered, uncertain, but full of possibility. Alex gathered his children close and turned Emma's ring one more time before slipping it into his pocket. They were home. The eviction notice arrived on official letterhead, delivered by a courier who waited while Alex signed for it with trembling hands. The formal language couldn't disguise the message. They had 72 hours to vacate the premises. Alex stared at the document in the gray morning light, coffee growing cold in his cup. 6 weeks since Emma's funeral, and the Blackwoods had made their move. The notice cited breach of residency agreement and failure to maintain property standards, legal fiction designed to provide cover for what was essentially a family coup. Daddy? Oliver appeared in the kitchen doorway, already dressed for school, his backpack slung over one shoulder. Why is there a truck outside? Through the window, Alex could see the moving truck parked in their driveway like a patient predator. 2 workers sat in the cab, waiting for instructions. Alexandra Blackwood stood on the front lawn in her wool coat, checking her watch with the precision of a general coordinating an invasion. "We're going to be moving," Alex said carefully, setting down the notice. "Remember how we talked about adventures?" Oliver's face, so much like Emma's in the shape of his eyes and the curve of his mouth, showed a maturity beyond his years. "Is it because of the money? I heard Grandma talking to Grandpa about how we can't afford to stay here." Alex felt a flash of anger that the children had been exposed to these adult concerns, but he kept his tone measured. "It's a bit more complicated than that, but yes, this house belongs to your grandparents and we need to find our own place." Sophia appeared beside her brother, still in her pajamas, clutching the sketchbook she had barely let out of her sight since Emma's death. "What about Mom's garden? And her studio?" The garden. Emma had spent countless hours nurturing the small plot behind the house, teaching the twins to plant seeds and tend seedlings. Sophia had helped her choose the flowers, while Oliver had been fascinated by the vegetables. It was where Emma had felt strongest during her illness, drawing energy from the earth and sunshine. "We'll make a new garden and a new studio," Alex promised, though he had no idea how he would fulfill that promise. Before either child could respond, the front door opened without ceremony. Alexandra entered with the authority of ownership, followed by William and 2 men in expensive suits Alex didn't recognize. "Good morning," Alexandra's tone suggested this was anything but good. "I trust you received the notice. We've arranged for a moving service to help with the transition. You can't just throw us out." Alex rose to his full height, the eviction notice crumpling in his grip. "This is our home. This house belongs to the Blackwood Family Trust," William replied, consulting a folder thick with legal documents. "Emma had usage rights during her lifetime, but those rights weren't transferable." "Surely you understood that." Alex hadn't understood that at all. Emma had handled their finances, paid the utilities, dealt with maintenance issues. She had protected him from feeling like a dependent, and in doing so had left him vulnerable to this moment. "Where are we supposed to go?" Sophia whispered, her voice trembling. Alexandra's expression softened fractionally as she looked at her granddaughter. "Darling, you and Oliver will come home with us. Grandfather has already arranged enrollment at Westfield Academy, and your rooms are waiting at the estate." "What about Daddy?" Oliver demanded, stepping closer to Alex's side. "Your father needs time to make proper arrangements for his future," Alexandra said carefully. "He'll visit, of course." "No." The word came out sharper than Alex intended, startling everyone in the room. "We stay together. That's not negotiable." One of the lawyers cleared his throat. "Mr. Reed, I understand this is emotional, but you need to consider what's practical. The children have substantial trust funds that will ensure their education and security. You want what's best for them." "I am what's best for them," Alex said quietly. "I'm their father." William stepped forward, his voice taking on the reasonable tone of a man accustomed to getting his way through patience rather than force. "Alexander, be realistic. You can't provide for them the way we can. Private schools, college funds, cultural opportunities. None of that matters if they lose their family." Alex interrupted. "We are their family," Alexandra said, her composure cracking slightly. "We're their blood. You're just what?" Alex's voice remained calm, but something dangerous flickered in his eyes. Alexandra caught herself, but the damage was done. The silence stretched uncomfortably until Sophia began to cry. Not the dramatic sobbing of a child seeking attention, but the quiet, heartbroken weeping of someone who understood that the adults had failed her. Oliver put his arm around his sister, his jaw set with determination. "We're not going anywhere without Dad." "Now see here, young man," William began. "No," Oliver said, his voice carrying more authority than a 10-year-old should possess. "Mom told us that families stick together no matter what. She said that's what makes them families." Alex felt a surge of pride so intense it nearly brought him to his knees. Emma's values lived on in their children, stronger than any legal document or financial pressure. "Very well," Alexandra said, her mask of concern slipping to reveal something colder underneath. "If that's your choice, you have until tomorrow evening to collect your personal belongings and leave." "And go where?" Alex asked. Alexandra shrugged with studied indifference. "That's hardly our concern anymore." The next 36 hours passed in a blur of packing and desperate phone calls. Alex contacted every rental agency in the city, but his salary and lack of security deposit eliminated most options. The few properties he could afford were either unsafe or unavailable immediately. James Chen appeared at intervals with coffee and quiet support. He helped Sophia pack her art supplies while Alex wrestled with the larger furniture. Oliver appointed himself inventory manager, creating careful lists of what they were taking and what they were leaving behind. "Will we ever come back?" Sophia asked as they loaded the last boxes into Alex's aging sedan. Alex looked at the house where his children had learned to walk, where he and Emma had dreamed about their future, where love had been the only currency that mattered. The garden was already showing signs of neglect, the late-season flowers drooping without Emma's careful attention. "I don't know, sweetheart, but wherever we go, we'll be together." The house on Oak Street looked like hope that had been abandoned and left to weather. The paint was peeling, the front steps sagged, and several windows were covered with plywood. But it had a roof, 4 walls, and rent Alex could manage if he was careful. James had driven them there in his practical sedan, having insisted they needed a proper escort to their new home. He produced a key from his pocket with the ceremony of someone passing on an important trust. The owner's been looking for the right tenant, someone who will see the potential instead of just the problems. Inside, the house smelled of dust and abandonment. The rooms were larger than Alex had expected, with high ceilings and hardwood floors hidden beneath years of neglect. Sophia walked through the empty spaces like a small ghost, her footsteps echoing in the silence. "It needs work," Oliver observed with the practicality he'd inherited from both parents. "It needs love," Alex corrected, surprising himself with the certainty in his voice. "And we've got plenty of that." They spent their first night on air mattresses in the living room, sharing a pizza James had insisted on buying. By lamplight, the room looked less forbidding, the shadows softer, the possibilities more apparent. "Tell us about when you and Mom first moved in together," Sophia requested, snuggling against Alex's side. So Alex told them about the tiny apartment near the university, how they'd furnished it with hand-me-downs and yard sale finds, how Emma had painted murals on the walls to make it feel like home. He told them about the first dinner party they'd hosted, serving spaghetti on mismatched plates to friends who became family. "Were you scared?" Oliver asked. "Terrified, but scared in a good way, like standing at the edge of something wonderful." Emma considered this seriously. "Are we scared in a good way now?" Alex looked around the empty room at his children's faces illuminated by the warm glow of the lamp and felt something shift inside him. The eviction notice had been meant to break him, to force him to surrender his children to a life he couldn't provide. Instead, it had freed him from the weight of other people's expectations. "Yes, I think we are." Outside, the wind rattled the old windows, but inside their circle of light, the Reed family began the work of building a new home from nothing but love and determination. 3 months into their new life, Alex discovered that poverty was less about not having money and more about the constant mental mathematics of survival. He could tell you the exact cost of a gallon of milk at 3 different stores, knew which day the bakery marked down day-old bread, and had memorized the bus schedule that would get him between home, the university, and his 2 part-time jobs with minimal transfers. Mornings began at 5:30 with preparation for his early classes at the university. Afternoons found him at the local museum, cataloging war artifacts for a special exhibition. Evenings were reserved for tutoring high school students in their affluent homes, where he sat at kitchen islands that cost more than his monthly rent and helped teenagers understand the historical significance of events that suddenly felt very personal. The teaching award from the university sat propped against the windowsill in his makeshift home office, a dusty corner of the living room where he graded papers by lamplight. The engraved plaque read, Alexander Reed, Excellence in Education 2020. Sometimes when exhaustion threatened to overwhelm him, he would look at those words and remember who he had been before grief and circumstance had redefined his life. Oliver and Sophia adapted to their new circumstances with the resilience that children possess but shouldn't need to use. They enrolled at Jefferson Middle School, a public institution that bore no resemblance to the private academies the Blackwoods had preferred. The building was older, the resources limited, but the teachers cared deeply about their students' success. Sophia struggled most with the transition. She had inherited Emma's sensitive nature, along with her artistic talent, and the chaos of their new reality manifested in her drawings. Where she had once sketched flowers and family portraits, her recent work featured dark, swirling storms and houses that looked perpetually on the verge of collapse. She's processing, explained Ms. Rivera, the school counselor, when Alex came for a conference. Children often express their emotions through art before they can verbalize them. The important thing is that she's still creating. Oliver, meanwhile, had appointed himself the family's unofficial guardian. He walked Sophia to her classes, helped her carry her art supplies, and deflected questions from curious classmates about why they had moved. At home, he insisted on helping with dinner preparation and household chores, his small face serious with self-imposed responsibility. You don't have to take care of everything, Alex told him one evening as they repaired a loose floorboard together. Mom said families help each other, Oliver replied, not looking up from the hammer he was wielding with careful precision. This is how I help. Their new neighborhood was a study in contrasts. Some houses were well-maintained with tidy yards and fresh paint. Others, like theirs, showed the accumulated wear of deferred maintenance and economic struggle. But there was a sense of community here that had been absent from their previous life. Neighbors who checked on each other, children who played in the streets without scheduled supervision, families who understood that wealth wasn't measured solely in dollars. James lived across town but visited regularly with books for the children and practical advice for Alex. He appeared one Saturday with tools and lumber, insisting that the front steps couldn't wait for the landlord's attention. People think poverty is about lacking things, he told Alex as they worked, but it's really about lacking choices. The trick is making sure your children understand the difference. The house itself was slowly yielding to their efforts. Alex had discovered a talent for renovation that surprised him. Weekends were devoted to painting walls, fixing leaky faucets, and coaxing life back into rooms that had been neglected for too long. Sophia chose colors for her bedroom, soft blues and greens that reminded her of her mother's garden. Oliver preferred practical improvements, better lighting for homework, shelves for his books, a workspace where he could build the model airplanes that had become his latest passion. Their first small victory came when Alex managed to repair the front steps. He had salvaged lumber from a construction site and spent an entire Saturday measuring, cutting, and hammering. When he finished, the steps were level and sturdy, a small improvement that felt monumental. They look like real steps now, Sophia observed, testing them carefully. They are real steps, Alex replied, wiping sweat from his forehead. Built to last. That evening, as they sat on their newly repaired front porch eating ice cream cones James had brought over, Alex felt something he hadn't experienced since Emma's death. Contentment. Not happiness exactly, that seemed too ambitious, but a quiet sense of accomplishment. The financial pressure was constant but manageable. Alex's 3 jobs provided enough income to cover rent, utilities, groceries, and basic necessities. There was no money for extras, no family vacations, restaurant meals, or new clothes unless absolutely necessary. But they weren't hungry, and they weren't homeless, and some days that felt like prosperity. Miss Rivera, the school counselor, called one afternoon to discuss Sophia's progress. She's incredibly talented, but I'm concerned about some of her recent work. There's a sadness there that goes beyond normal childhood experiences. Alex arranged to meet with Ms. Rivera after school. She showed him Sophia's portfolio, Dozens of drawings that chronicled their family's journey from loss to displacement to tentative rebuilding. The progression was remarkable. Early pieces were chaotic and dark, but recent work showed emerging signs of hope. A house with strong foundations, a family of three figures holding hands against a backdrop of storms. She's working through her grief, Ms. Rivera explained. Art is her way of making sense of change. But she might benefit from the after-school art program we're starting. It's free, and it would give her more time to develop her skills. Alex hesitated. The program ran until 600, which would mean Sophia taking the bus home alone or waiting for him to finish his museum job, but the opportunity was too valuable to pass up. We'll make it work, he decided. That night, when he told Sophia about the art program, her face lit up with the first genuine smile he'd seen in months. Really? With real supplies and everything? Ms. Rivera says you have exceptional talent, Alex replied, his chest tight with emotion. Sophia hugged him fiercely, and for a moment, Alex felt rich beyond measure. Oliver's adjustment had been quieter but no less significant. His protective instincts had sharpened, but so had his sense of justice. When a classmate made fun of Sophia's thrift store clothes, Oliver had stood up to him with words rather than fists, a maturity that impressed his teachers and worried his father in equal measure. He's carrying too much responsibility for his age, Alex confided to James during one of his visits. Maybe, James replied, watching Oliver help Sophia with her homework at the kitchen table. Or maybe he's learning what real strength looks like. Sometimes children surprise us with how much they can handle when they know they're loved. As autumn settled over their neighborhood, the house on Oak Street began to feel less like a refuge and more like a home. Alex had planted a small garden in the backyard, nothing as elaborate as Emma's, but enough to provide fresh vegetables and give the children a connection to the earth their mother had loved. The teaching award caught the evening light from its place on the windowsill, its bronze surface reflecting the warm glow of their simple living room. Alex looked at it and realized that excellence in education wasn't just about curriculum and test scores. It was about teaching his children that their worth wasn't determined by their circumstances, that family was built through love and commitment rather than wealth and status. They were learning those lessons together, one repaired step at a time. 6 months after moving to Oak Street, Alex found Sophia's art supplies hidden beneath a loose floorboard in her bedroom. The wooden box was lacquered mahogany, expensive and elegant, with Sophia Elizabeth Reed engraved on a small brass plate. Inside, nestled in custom-fitted compartments, were professional-grade watercolors, charcoal pencils, and brushes that cost more than Alex spent on groceries in a week. Mom bought them for me, Sophia explained when he asked, her voice small with worry. She said they were for when I was ready to create something important. I was saving them. Alex lifted out a tube of ultramarine blue, feeling its weight in quality. Emma had chosen each item carefully, investing in tools that would last a lifetime. The gesture was so typical of his wife, planning for a future she wouldn't see, ensuring their daughter would have what she needed to pursue her dreams. I think you're ready now, he said gently. Mom would want you to use them. That afternoon, Sophia set up her easel in the backyard and began to paint. Her first piece was tentative, a simple landscape of their street with its modest houses and towering oak trees. But as the days passed, her confidence grew. She painted their house before and after Alex's renovations, capturing the transformation from neglect to care. She painted Oliver building a birdhouse, his tongue poking out in concentration. She painted Alex reading on the front porch, looking peaceful in a way that surprised him. The art supplies became a bridge between Sophia's past and present, a tangible reminder that some gifts transcended loss. When she worked with them, she spoke to her mother, quiet conversations about color choices and composition that Alex pretended not to overhear. Oliver's adaptation had taken a different form. He had discovered the neighborhood's informal network of boys who traded baseball cards, built tree forts, and engaged in elaborate games of capture the flag that spanned multiple yards. For the first time since Emma's death, he was acting like a typical 10-year-old rather than a miniature adult. Alex watched from the kitchen window as Oliver played catch with Miguel Santos, who lived 3 houses down. The boys' laughter carried on the evening air, a sound Alex had worried he might never hear again. He's making friends, James observed, joining Alex at the window with 2 cups of coffee. He had taken to stopping by most evenings, ostensibly to check on their progress, but really because he enjoyed their company as much as they enjoyed his. I was starting to worry he'd forgotten how to be a kid, Alex admitted. Children are resilient, but they need permission to heal. Sounds like you're all giving each other that permission. 3 months into their new life, Alex discovered that poverty was less about not having money and more about the constant mental mathematics of survival. He could tell you the exact cost of a gallon of milk at 3 different stores, knew which day the bakery marked down day-old bread, and had memorized the bus schedule that would get him between home, the university, and his 2 part-time jobs with minimal transfers. Mornings began at 5:30 with preparation for his early classes at the university. Afternoons found him at the local museum, cataloging war artifacts for a special exhibition. Evenings were reserved for tutoring high school students in their affluent homes, where he sat at kitchen islands that cost more than his monthly rent and helped teenagers understand the historical significance of events that suddenly felt very personal. The teaching award from the university sat propped against the windowsill in his makeshift home office, a dusty corner of the living room where he graded papers by lamplight. The engraved plaque read, Alexander Reed, Excellence in Education, 2020. Sometimes, when exhaustion threatened to overwhelm him, he would look at those words and remember who he had been before grief and circumstance had redefined his life. Oliver and Sophia adapted to their new circumstances with the resilience that children possess but shouldn't need to use. They enrolled at Jefferson Middle School, a public institution that bore no resemblance to the private academies the Blackwoods had preferred. The building was older, the resources limited, but the teachers cared deeply about their students' success. The phone had been ringing with increasing frequency, always the same number, always during dinner or homework time. Alex had stopped answering calls from numbers he didn't recognize, assuming they were telemarketers or debt collectors. His financial situation was precarious but stable. He didn't need reminders about bills he was already struggling to pay. But the calls persisted with a determination that eventually wore down his resistance. On a particularly exhausting Tuesday, after Oliver had asked 3 times why the phone kept ringing, Alex finally answered. Mr. Reed, this is Rebecca Morgan, principal at Jefferson Middle School. I've been trying to reach you regarding your children. Alex's first instinct was concern. He gripped the phone tighter, scenarios of school trouble flashing through his mind. Is everything all right? Are the children okay? They're fine, Mr. Reed. Quite remarkable, actually. I'd like to discuss some opportunities for them, particularly Sophia. I understand your situation is complicated right now. Could we meet tomorrow during your lunch break? The principal's office at Jefferson Middle School was cramped but welcoming, with student artwork covering most available wall space. Rebecca Morgan was in her early 50s, with prematurely gray hair cut in a practical bob and eyes that missed nothing. She rose to greet Alex, extending a hand across her desk cluttered with papers and a half-eaten sandwich. Thank you for coming, Mr. Reed. I know your schedule must be demanding. What's this about my children? Direct. I appreciate that. I'll be equally direct. Your daughter Sophia has extraordinary artistic talent. Her art teacher showed me her portfolio yesterday. There's depth and emotional intelligence in her work that's rare in children twice her age. Alex felt a surge of pride tempered with wariness. Praise for his children often came with expectations he couldn't meet. And Oliver, your son's math scores are the highest we've seen in 5 years. He's also showing leadership qualities well beyond his years. Mr. Reed, Jefferson may not have the resources of private schools, but we do have specialized programs for exceptional students. The arts program meets after school 3 days a week. The advanced mathematics track meets during regular hours. I'd like to recommend both children for these opportunities. That's very kind, but I'm not sure how we'd manage the logistics. My schedule, I'm aware of your situation, Mr. Reed. Rebecca's tone softened, but her gaze remained direct. The Blackwoods have made some inquiries about the children's well-being. Rather persistent inquiries. Alex felt his shoulders tense. So it had begun already, the campaign to prove him an unfit parent. I see. We also have an after-school program until 6 p.m. Many of our faculty volunteer their time. The children would be supervised, receive a healthy snack, and have access to our facilities. There would be no cost to you. Alex studied the principle carefully, searching for the hidden agenda he'd come to expect from people offering help. Why would you do this? Rebecca's expression changed, a shadow of old pain briefly visible before her professional demeanor returned. 20 years ago, I lost my husband unexpectedly. I had two young children in a teaching position that barely covered our expenses. Someone extended a hand when I needed it most. I'm simply paying it forward, Mr. Reed. The honesty in her voice resonated with something in Alex. For the first time in months, he felt seen. Not as a charity case or an inadequate father, but as a person doing his best in impossible circumstances. Thank you. We'd be grateful for the opportunity. Good. Now there's something else you should know. A woman named Eleanor Murphy has been volunteering in our library twice a week. She lives on Oak Street, 3 houses down from you. She's offered to walk the children home on days when you're working late. She's a retired teacher, background checked, and well-respected in the community. I don't know her. She knows you or of you. Emma was one of her students years ago. Elementary school, I believe. The mention of Emma sent a jolt through Alex, a connection to his wife's past, here in this unexpected place. Emma never mentioned an Eleanor Murphy. Eleanor says Emma used to stay after school to paint, said she had the most extraordinary eye for color she'd ever seen in a child. She recognized Sophia's work immediately, said the talent runs in the family. That evening, Alex sat on the front steps watching Oliver and Sophia play a complex game of their own invention in the front yard. The autumn air carried a crispness that hinted at the coming winter, a season he was dreading in their drafty house with its inadequate heating system. The sound of footsteps on the sidewalk drew his attention. An elderly woman approached, her silver hair neatly styled, her posture still straight despite her years. She carried a covered dish and moved with the confident stride of someone who had spent decades managing classrooms. Mr. Reed, I'm Eleanor Murphy. I believe Rebecca Morgan mentioned I might stop by. She had kind eyes that crinkled at the corners when she smiled, but there was a sharpness to her gaze that suggested she missed very little. She did. Please call me Alex. Then you must call me Eleanor. I've brought dinner, my mother's chicken and dumplings recipe, feeds an army, or 2 growing children and their father. The children approached cautiously, sizing up this new presence in their carefully guarded world. Did you really know our mom when she was little? Sophia asked. Direct as always. I did indeed. She was about your age when she came to my art class for the first time. She painted a blue bird that was so realistic, I thought it might fly right off the page. Was she good at math too, Oliver asked, not to be outdone. Eleanor laughed, a warm sound that seemed to make the chilly evening less forbidding. She was determined, which is more important than being naturally good. She worked harder than anyone to understand fractions, said she needed to know them properly to mix her paints. As they sat around the kitchen table eating Eleanor's chicken and dumplings, Alex felt something loosen in his chest. The constant vigilance of sole parenting, the fear of failing his children, the bone-deep exhaustion. None of it disappeared, but for the first time since Emma's death, he felt the possibility that they wouldn't have to face everything alone. Later, after the children had gone to bed, Eleanor helped Alex wash the dishes, her movements efficient and practiced. Emma was special, you know, not just her talent, but her heart. When the other children were cruel to the janitor's son, making fun of his clothes, excluding him from games, Emma was the one who sat with him at lunch, drew portraits of him looking heroic, like a knight or an astronaut, gave him one every Friday until the other children started seeing him differently. Alex leaned against the counter, the damp dish towel forgotten in his hands. That sounds like Emma. Eleanor dried her hands, her expression thoughtful. She told me once, years later, when she came back to visit, that her grandmother had taught her something important. Real power isn't in what you have, but in what you choose to give away. The Blackwoods never understood that about her. They saw her generosity as weakness, her compassion as naivety. They were wrong. It was her greatest strength. As Eleanor prepared to leave, she paused at the door. This neighborhood looks after its own, Alex. You'll find that out soon enough. We may not have much individually, but together we make do. The Santos family 2 doors down. Gabriel's boy Miguel is Oliver's age. The Kims at the corner store will put things on credit if you're ever in a tight spot, and I'm just 3 houses away if you need anything at all. Thank you for dinner and for remembering her. Eleanor's eyes softened. How could anyone forget Emma? She burned so bright. The following Saturday morning brought the sound of vehicles pulling up outside the house. Alex opened the front door to find James Chen directing a small army of people unloading tools and supplies from pickup trucks and cars. What's going on? Oak Street Neighborhood Association's Fall Fix-Up Day. James gestured to the assorted group gathering on the lawn, an eclectic mix of ages and backgrounds, all wearing work clothes and determined expressions. Every year we choose one house that needs a little extra attention before winter sets in. This year, it's yours. A tall, muscular man in his 30s approached, wiping his hands on well-worn jeans before extending one to Alex. Gabriel Santos, I'm a contractor when there's work, handyman when there isn't. That's my boy Miguel with your son. We're going to tackle that roof today. Can't have you freezing when the snow comes. Before Alex could formulate a response, a petite Asian woman in her 60s joined them carrying a large thermos. Mrs. Kim from the corner store. I bring coffee now, lunch later. My husband is checking your furnace. He fix anything with motor. Alex was overwhelmed by the generosity of these strangers who were treating his family's well-being as a community responsibility. I can't possibly repay. Gabriel cut him off with a friendly wave. No one's keeping score, Professor. My roof leaked for 2 winters before I could afford to fix it. The Murphy's porch was rebuilt by volunteers after the big storm 3 years ago. We take care of each other here because someday it might be any one of us needing the help. By sundown, the house on Oak Street had a patched roof, repaired gutters, sealed windows, and a functioning heating system. The front steps had been rebuilt, the porch railings secured, and the yard cleared of debris. Inside, the drafty spots had been identified and insulated, the plumbing fixed, and the electrical system checked for safety. As everyone gathered in the backyard for Mrs. Kim's promised lunch, now dinner, Alex found himself surrounded by neighbors who had become allies in a single day. They traded stories over paper plates laden with food, shared local knowledge about which schools had the best programs and which officials could be counted on to actually fix the potholes, debated the merits of various home repair techniques with the good-natured arguing of people who respected each other's opinions. Standing slightly apart from the group, watching his children integrate seamlessly into this new social circle, Alex was joined by Eleanor. This is what community looks like, Alex. Not the formal dinner parties and charity galas the Blackwoods attend, but people rolling up their sleeves and diving in when someone needs help. Emma would have loved this. She would indeed. And she'd want you to accept it without feeling like you're taking charity. There's dignity in being part of something larger than yourself. As the weeks passed, the house on Oak Street slowly transformed from a shelter into a home. Alex's salary stretched a bit further now that the heating system worked efficiently. The children thrived in their specialized programs at school. Oliver joined the math team while Sophia's artwork was selected for display in the school's main hallway. The morning of the first significant snowfall, Alex found Sophia standing at her bedroom window, staring out at the transformed landscape with an expression of wonder. Her sketchbook lay open beside her, a half-finished drawing capturing the way the snow clung to the bare branches of the oak tree in their yard. It looks like icing on a cake, she said without turning around. Mom would have loved to paint this. Alex moved to stand beside her, placing a gentle hand on her shoulder. She's still here in a way, in how you see the world, in the things you notice that others miss. Sophia leaned against him, her small body warm against his side. Do you think she knew we'd end up here? In this house, I mean. Alex thought about James Chen's envelope, the key that had appeared precisely when they needed it most. I think she did her best to take care of us, even when she couldn't be here herself. A rhythmic thumping from outside interrupted their moment. Looking down, they saw Oliver in the yard, methodically shoveling the walkway with the determined efficiency he brought to every task. He had woken early, found the shovel in the shed, and taken it upon himself to clear the paths without being asked. That night, after the children were asleep, Alex sat at the kitchen table with Emma's journal open before him. He had been reading it in small doses, finding both comfort and pain in her words. Tonight's entry was from early in her illness, when hope still outweighed fear. I find myself thinking about my grandmother more and more these days, the way she lived so fully despite having so little in material terms. the way she found joy in simple pleasures. A perfect tomato from her garden, the sound of rain on the roof, a child's laughter. She used to tell me that the Blackwoods had spent generations accumulating wealth, but had forgotten why they wanted it in the first place. Money is just a tool, Emma, she'd say. It's what you build with it that matters. I wonder what she would think of our life now. Would she approve of the choices I've made? The balance I've tried to strike between privilege and purpose? I hope she would see that I've tried to honor her legacy in my own way, to teach Oliver and Sophia that true wealth isn't measured in dollars, but in moments of genuine connection. If things go badly and I must face the possibility that they might, I want Alexander to understand that he already possesses everything necessary to raise our children well. He has integrity, compassion, and the courage to stand by his convictions even when it would be easier to compromise. These are the qualities I fell in love with, the values I want our children to inherit. The Blackwoods will try to convince him otherwise. They'll use their money as both carrot and stick, offering financial security while implying he's inadequate without it. They've never understood that some things can't be bought. Character, courage, the kind of love that puts another's needs before your own. My grandmother understood. She left me her legacy for a reason, separate from the family fortune, protected from my parents' influence. When the time comes, it will serve its purpose. Until then, I must prepare as best I can for all possibilities. Alex closed the journal, his mind lingering on the mention of Emma's grandmother and her separate legacy. He had assumed Emma's occasional references to her grandmother were purely sentimental, fond memories of a beloved relative. But this entry suggested something more concrete, a financial legacy independent of the Blackwood fortune. If such an inheritance existed, where was it? And why hadn't Emma accessed it during her illness or made provisions for it to support them after her death? The ringing phone interrupted his thoughts. The caller ID showed an unfamiliar number with the city's area code. Usually Alex would let such calls go to voicemail, but something, perhaps the lingering questions from Emma's journal, prompted him to answer. Mr. Reed, this is Victoria Harris from Caldwell, Bishop and Associates. I've been trying to reach you regarding an important legal matter concerning your late wife, Emma Reed. Alex's grip tightened on the phone. What sort of legal matter? I'd prefer not to discuss the details over the phone. Would you be available to meet at our offices tomorrow morning? Say 9 o'clock? I have classes until noon. I understand. Would 4 o'clock work? It's imperative that we speak as soon as possible, Mr. Reed. This concerns matters with significant time sensitivity. The law offices of Caldwell Bishop and Associates occupied the middle floors of a downtown high-rise, neither as opulent as the top-floor firms catering to the city's elite, nor as utilitarian as the storefront practices serving working-class clients. The reception area featured muted colors, comfortable but not luxurious furniture, and discreetly framed diplomas and certifications. Victoria Harris was younger than Alex had expected, perhaps in her early 30s, with a no-nonsense demeanor that suggested efficiency rather than warmth. She greeted him with a firm handshake and led him to a conference room where several folders were arranged neatly on the polished table. Thank you for coming, Mr. Reed. I appreciate your promptness given your challenging schedule. You said this concerns my late wife? Victoria nodded, opening the top folder with practiced precision. Yes, I represent the Ellington Trust, a private foundation established by your wife's maternal grandmother, Margaret Ellington. Are you familiar with Mrs. Ellington? Emma spoke of her grandmother often, but I never met her. She passed away before Emma and I met. Did Emma ever discuss her grandmother's financial legacy? Alex thought carefully, remembering snippets of conversations in the journal entry he'd read just the night before. She mentioned that her grandmother had views about money that differed from the Blackwoods, that she believed in using wealth purposefully rather than accumulating it for its own sake. But she never discussed specific inheritances or trusts. Victoria made a note in her folder, her expression revealing nothing. Mrs. Ellington established the trust in 1985 with explicit instructions regarding its management and eventual distribution. The principle was to remain untouched until certain conditions were met. Emma was named as the primary beneficiary upon reaching the age of 30, provided she demonstrated what Mrs. Ellington termed a life of purpose and compassion. Alex leaned forward, his interest piqued. And did she? Meet the conditions, I mean? Victoria allowed a small smile. According to the trustee's evaluation, yes. Emma was notified of her inheritance on her 30th birthday 3 years ago. The trust, valued at approximately $195 million, was placed under her sole control at that time. The words hit Alex like a physical blow. He stared at Victoria, certain he had misheard. That's impossible. Emma never mentioned anything about that kind of money. We lived on my professor's salary and her part-time gallery work. We budgeted for vacations, saved for the children's education. If she had access to that kind of wealth, she chose not to use it for day-to-day expenses. According to our records, Emma established the Reed Foundation immediately after gaining control of the trust. She directed that the funds be used primarily for philanthropic purposes, with specific provisions for educational initiatives, community development, and healthcare access for underserved populations. Alex struggled to reconcile this information with the life they had lived together. Emma secretly controlling a fortune while they clipped coupons and bought clothes on sale. Emma establishing a foundation he'd never heard of, making decisions about millions of dollars without ever mentioning it to him. Why wouldn't she tell me? Victoria consulted another document, her expression softening slightly. That's where matters become more personal, Mr. Reed. Emma left specific instructions regarding disclosure of the foundation and its assets. According to her directives, you were to be informed of its existence exactly 1 year after her death, provided certain conditions were met. What conditions? Separation from the Blackwood family's influence, establishment of an independent household, demonstration of, and I'm quoting directly from her instructions, continued commitment to the values we shared throughout our marriage, particularly regarding the children's upbringing. The realization dawned slowly, then all at once. Emma had anticipated everything. Her parents' attempt to control the children, Alex's displacement from their home, the financial struggles that would follow. She had orchestrated a test, a proving ground for the principles they had built their marriage upon. She knew this would happen. She knew her parents would try to take the children, that they'd use money as leverage. Victoria nodded. Based on my conversations with Emma during the establishment of the foundation, yes. She was concerned that her parents' wealth would influence the children's values if they were raised in the Blackwood household. She was equally concerned that you might compromise your principles if offered financial security in exchange for certain concessions regarding their upbringing. Anger flared briefly in Alex's chest. Anger that Emma had kept such secrets, that she had orchestrated this elaborate test without his knowledge or consent. But the anger faded as quickly as it had appeared, replaced by a deeper understanding of the woman he had loved. Emma, who had grown up witnessing the corrosive effects of unearned wealth and privilege. Emma, who had chosen a life of purpose and meaning over one of luxury and ease. Emma, who had wanted to ensure that their children would inherit values, not just money. What happens now? Victoria opened another folder, revealing a document bearing Emma's familiar signature. Now, as the surviving parent and legal guardian of Oliver and Sophia Reed, you become the primary trustee of the Reed Foundation. Emma specified that the children would become co-trustees upon reaching the age of 21, assuming they demonstrate the same values the foundation was established to promote. Until then, all decisions regarding the management and distribution of assets rest with you. Alex ran a hand through his hair, overwhelmed by the magnitude of the responsibility Emma had entrusted to him. I don't know anything about running a foundation. I'm a history professor, not a financial manager. The foundation has a professional management team in place, with clear guidelines established by Emma. Your role would be oversight and direction, ensuring that the foundation's activities align with its stated mission. Additionally, there are provisions for your family's financial security, a modest but comfortable stipend to cover living expenses, educational costs for the children, and healthcare needs. And the Blackwoods? Do they know about this? Victoria's expression turned carefully neutral. The Blackwoods are aware of Mrs. Ellington's trust. They were explicitly excluded from any control or influence over its assets by the terms of Mrs. Ellington's will. However, they are not aware of Emma's specific directives regarding the Reed Foundation or the timing of your appointment as trustee. I need time to process this. Of course. These documents outline the foundation's current activities, assets, and legal structure. I'd encourage you to review them at your convenience. There's no immediate deadline for your formal acceptance of the trustee position, though there are quarterly distributions scheduled that would benefit from your input. As Alex left the law office, the city streets seemed altered somehow, as if he were seeing them through a different lens. The weight of Emma's revelation pressed against his chest, a complex mixture of gratitude, betrayal, and disbelief. He had lived the past year in a state of near constant financial anxiety, working 3 jobs to keep their heads above water, while a fortune waited in trust, its revelation dependent on his adherence to principles he would have maintained regardless. Back at the house on Oak Street, Alex found Eleanor sitting on the front porch with Sophia, who was sketching the winter sunset with fierce concentration. Oliver was helping Gabriel Santos build a snowman in the yard, their breath forming clouds in the cold air. "You look like you've seen a ghost," Eleanor observed as Alex approached. "Something like that. The children are fine. Homework's done, dinner's warming in the oven, and Gabriel's boy is staying for supper, if that's all right with you." Alex nodded absently, his mind still reeling from Victoria Harris's revelations. "Thank you for watching them, for everything." Eleanor studied him with the perceptive gaze that had assessed generations of children. "Whatever's troubling you, remember that burdens shared are burdens halved. When you're ready to talk, I'm a good listener." After dinner, with the children occupied with board games in the living room, Alex retreated to the kitchen where Eleanor was washing dishes despite his protests that he could handle it. "Emma left us money." The words came out abruptly, without preamble. Eleanor's hands stilled in the soapy water, but she didn't turn around. "Her grandmother's trust, you knew." "Not specifics. But Emma mentioned her grandmother had left her something significant, separate from the Blackwood fortune. Said it was important to her that the money be used as her grandmother intended, not absorbed into the Blackwood empire." "Why wouldn't she tell me? We were married, we shared everything, or I thought we did." Eleanor dried her hands and turned to face him, her expression compassionate but firm. "Did you share everything?" "What do you mean?" "I mean, did you tell Emma about your nightmares after your father died? About how you blamed yourself for not being there when he had the heart attack? About how you pushed yourself to achieve academically because you thought it would somehow make up for failing him?" Alex stared at her, shocked. "How could you possibly know about that?" "Emma told me. She worried about you, about how you carried that burden alone, even though she knew all about it. She said you thought you were protecting her by not talking about your pain, but really you were protecting yourself from being vulnerable." The observation struck uncomfortably close to home. Alex had indeed kept certain aspects of his grief private, believing he was shielding Emma from additional worries during her illness. "That's different, is it?" Emma grew up watching money destroy what mattered most. Her parents used wealth as a weapon, a tool for control and manipulation. Her grandmother showed her a different way, that money could be a force for good when wielded with compassion and clear purpose. Emma wanted to protect what mattered most to her: you, the children, the values you shared. Maybe keeping the trust separate was her way of ensuring those values wouldn't be compromised. Alex sank into a kitchen chair, the events of the day catching up with him in a wave of exhaustion. "There's so much money, Eleanor, millions. We could have used it for her treatment, for specialists, for experimental therapies. And you think she didn't consider that?" Emma was practical as well as idealistic. If she believed additional treatments wouldn't change the outcome, she'd make the choice that aligned with her values, leaving a legacy that would benefit many rather than extending her life by weeks or months at enormous cost. She left me in charge of it all: a foundation, philanthropic initiatives, everything. I don't know the first thing about managing that kind of wealth." Eleanor's eyes crinkled with amusement. "And you think Emma didn't know that? She chose you as trustee because of your character, not your financial expertise. She trusted your judgment, your integrity, your commitment to the principles you shared. The rest is just logistics. Hire good people, listen to sound advice, stay true to the mission." The phone rang, interrupting their conversation. Alex answered to find William Blackwood on the line, his voice carrying the forced joviality of someone with an agenda. "Alexander, good evening. I hope I'm not interrupting dinner." "We've finished, actually." "What can I do for you, William? I've been thinking about our last conversation and realize we may have been hasty in our approach. Alexandra and I would like to discuss a compromise regarding the children's education and living arrangements. Perhaps you could bring Oliver and Sophia to the house this Sunday for lunch? Alex's grip tightened on the phone. The timing was too convenient, coming just hours after his meeting with Victoria Harris. Had the Blackwoods somehow learned about Emma's trust? Were they trying to reestablish influence now that they suspected his financial situation had changed? I appreciate the invitation, William, but we have plans this weekend. The children are participating in a community service project with their school. I see. Another time, perhaps. How are they adjusting to their new circumstances? They're thriving, actually. Oliver's on the math team, and Sophia's artwork was selected for a special exhibition at the community center. They've made friends, joined activities, become part of the neighborhood. How nice. Well, do give them our love. And Alexander, our offer still stands. Should you reconsider the children's educational options? Westfield Academy has an excellent scholarship program. The implication was clear. The Blackwoods still believed Alex couldn't afford quality education for his children, and they were positioning themselves as benevolent providers of opportunities he couldn't supply. I'll keep that in mind. Good night, William. After hanging up, Alex turned to find Eleanor watching him with a knowing expression. The Blackwoods making overtures? Attempting to reestablish contact, yes. I wonder if they've somehow heard about the trust. It's possible. Money talks, and the financial world is smaller than you might think. If they have, it explains the sudden interest in reconciliation. Alex shook his head, a newfound determination settling over him. It doesn't matter. Nothing's changed. We're building a life here, a good life based on real connections and genuine community. The money doesn't change who we are or what matters most. Eleanor smiled, a warm, approving expression that reminded Alex of his own mother. And that, Alexander Reed, is exactly why Emma chose you to carry on her legacy. The following Saturday brought a cold, clear morning. Alex woke early to find Sophia already dressed and gathering her art supplies. The community center was hosting a children's art workshop, and Sophia had been invited to assist the instructor, her first foray into teaching others. Do you think I'll be any good at it, Dad? Teaching, I mean? Alex helped her organize her materials, carefully placing brushes and paints in a carrying case Emma had given her for her 8th birthday. I think you'll be wonderful. You have your mother's patience and her ability to see the potential in things others might miss. Oliver appeared in the doorway, yawning but dressed for his own activity, a regional math competition being held at the local high school. Ready to destroy the competition, mathematician? Alex asked, ruffling his son's hair affectionately. Oliver ducked away, smoothing his hair back into place with the dignity of a child on the cusp of adolescence. It's not about destroying anyone. It's about solving problems accurately and efficiently. Just like your mother. Practical to the core. As Alex helped load the car with their respective equipment, a sleek black luxury sedan pulled up to the curb. Alexandra Blackwood emerged, immaculately dressed as always, her expression a careful mask of grandmotherly concern. Oliver, Sophia, what a happy coincidence. The children froze, their bodies tensing in a way that made Alex's heart ache. Even after months apart, their grandmother's presence still triggered a defensive response. Alex moved to stand slightly in front of them, a subtle but clear protective gesture. Alexandra, this is unexpected. We were in the neighborhood. The lie was transparent. The Blackwoods hadn't set foot in this part of the city in decades unless absolutely necessary. Actually, I wanted to see the children. It's been too long, and William and I miss them terribly. Sophia edged closer to Alex, her hand slipping into his. We're actually on our way out. Sophia has an art workshop, and Oliver has a math competition. Alexandra's smile tightened almost imperceptibly. How nice. Perhaps another time then. We'd love to have you all for dinner next weekend. The children's rooms are just as they left them. Before Alex could respond, Oliver stepped forward, his young face set with determination. We don't want to come for dinner, grandmother. We like our home here. Alexandra's composure faltered, genuine hurt flashing across her features before the polished facade returned. Darling, surely you can't prefer this situation to the comforts we can provide. Your grandfather and I only want what's best for you. Sophia joined her brother, her voice soft but clear. Dad is what's best for us. He's teaching us important things. Like what, Precious? Alexandra's tone was indulgent, as if humoring a child's fantasy. Like how to be brave when things are hard, like how family sticks together no matter what, like how money isn't the most important thing. Alexandra flinched slightly at the direct hit, her gaze shifting to Alex with newfound calculation. You've certainly made an impression on them, Alexander. I wonder if they would feel the same way if they understood the opportunities they're missing, the connections, the advantages that could shape their entire futures. They understand more than you think. Alex's voice was calm but firm. They understand that some advantages come with strings attached, and some opportunities cost more than they're worth. A car horn sounded from down the street. James Chen's sedan approaching to transport Oliver to his competition. The elderly professor waved cheerfully, oblivious to the tension unfolding on the sidewalk. That's our ride, Oliver. Better get going if you want time to warm up before the competition starts. Oliver hesitated, looking between his father and grandmother with the awareness of a child who had witnessed too many adult conflicts. Goodbye, grandmother, he said formally before turning to climb into James's car. Alexandra watched him go, something like regret briefly visible in her expression. This isn't over, Alexander. The children deserve better than this neighborhood, this lifestyle. Emma wanted them to grow up understanding what really matters. Alex interrupted, his patience wearing thin. She wanted them to value people over possessions, character over status, compassion over competition. Everything they're learning here, in this community, you're so quick to dismiss. Alexander's expression hardened. You know nothing about what Emma truly wanted. You were a phase, Alexander, her rebellion against our world. If she had lived, she would have eventually returned to her proper place, and the children with her. The casual cruelty of the statement took Alex's breath away. Before he could formulate a response, Sophia spoke up, her voice stronger than he had ever heard it. That's not true. Mom loved Dad more than anything. She told me so when she was sick. She said he was the bravest, kindest person she knew, and that we should always remember that. Alexandra stepped back as if physically struck, her carefully maintained facade cracking to reveal the grief and anger beneath. You're turning them against us, poisoning them with your resentment. I've never spoken against you to the children. Not once. Whatever opinions they have of you are based entirely on your own actions. This conversation isn't finished, Alexander. William's attorney will be in touch regarding the visitation arrangements. The threat hung in the air as Alexandra returned to her waiting car. Alex watched it disappear down the street, a cold knot forming in his stomach. The Blackwoods had resources, connections, and a lifetime of getting their way. If they decided to pursue legal action for visitation or partial custody, the battle would be exhausting and expensive. Dad, are we in trouble? Sophia's small hand squeezed his, bringing him back to the present moment. No, sweetheart. Your grandparents miss you, that's all. It's natural for them to want to see you. But we don't have to go if we don't want to, right? Alex knelt to her level, meeting her worried gaze directly. No one is going to make you do anything you don't want to do, I promise. The community center bustled with activity. Children of all ages gathered for various weekend programs. The art room was filled with eager young faces waiting for instruction, and Sophia's nervousness visibly melted away as she helped distribute supplies and demonstrate techniques. Alex watched from the doorway as his daughter moved confidently among the children, showing a young boy how to hold a brush properly, praising a little girl's color choices, offering gentle corrections with Emma's same patient manner. She's a natural. Rebecca Morgan appeared beside him, a proud smile on her face. It's remarkable how she connects with the younger children. They respond to her instinctively. She gets that from her mother. And her compassion, her desire to help others succeed? I suspect those qualities have two sources. Rebecca's kind observation eased some of the tension from Alex's shoulders. Whatever the Blackwoods might claim about his inadequacy as a parent, the evidence was before him. Children who were not merely surviving their circumstances, but growing through them, developing strengths and character that might have remained dormant in a life of privilege and ease. The winter afternoon brought a light snowfall as Alex made his way to the high school where Oliver's math competition was concluding. He arrived just in time to see his son's team receive their first-place medals, Oliver's face flushed with excitement and pride. Did you see, Dad? We won. I got all the geometry problems right, even the bonus question about the irregular hexagon. That's fantastic, buddy. I'm so proud of you. As they walked to the car, Oliver's medal tucked safely in his pocket, he grew quieter, his expression turning thoughtful. Dad, why does grandmother want us to live with them so badly? Is it just because they're rich and we're not? Alex considered the question carefully, wanting to be honest without denigrating the Blackwoods. I think it's more complicated than that. Your grandparents love you in their own way, and they believe their lifestyle would give you advantages. They probably also miss your mother terribly, and you and Sophia are their connection to her. But they could visit us or invite us over sometimes without trying to make us move there. They could, but some people have very fixed ideas about what's right and proper. Your grandparents believe that their way of life is inherently better because it includes certain privileges and opportunities. But it doesn't include you, and it wouldn't be our family anymore if we lived there. Alex's throat tightened with emotion at his son's simple but profound observation. That's true, and that's why we're staying together, no matter what. The phone was ringing as they entered the house. Alex answered to find Victoria Harris on the line, her typically composed voice carrying an unusual note of urgency. Mr. Reed, I apologize for calling on a weekend, but there's been a development you should be aware of. William Blackwood contacted our firm this morning, inquiring about the status of the Ellington Trust and specifically about Emma's directives regarding the Reed Foundation. How would he even know to ask about that? I suspect Alexandra Blackwood may have maintained connections with some of the original trustees. Regardless, they're now aware of your position as trustee and the foundation's assets. What did you tell them? Only what we're legally obligated to disclose. Confirmation that the trust exists and that you are the current trustee. The specific conditions Emma established and her instructions regarding the children remain confidential. They'll try to challenge it. They may indeed. Mr. Blackwood implied as much, suggesting that Emma's illness might have affected her judgment regarding the foundation's management. However, Emma anticipated this possibility. She underwent comprehensive psychological evaluation before establishing her directives, and the documentation is impeccable. It would be extremely difficult to successfully challenge on grounds of diminished capacity. After ending the call, Alex found Eleanor and James in the kitchen preparing dinner with the children. The domestic scene, Oliver carefully measuring ingredients for cornbread while Sophia set the table, the adults working in comfortable tandem, contrasted sharply with the legal battle looming on the horizon. The Blackwoods know about the trust, Alex said quietly to James and Eleanor after sending the children to wash up. James nodded, unsurprised. I expected as much. William Blackwood has connections throughout the financial community. It was only a matter of time. They'll come after the money. They'll try to control it, like they try to control everything. Eleanor's expression remained calm, her hands steady as she stirred the soup simmering on the stove. Let them try. Emma was nothing if not thorough. If she set up the trust to protect you and the children from their influence, she would have anticipated their attempts to circumvent her wishes. But they have resources, connections. They could make our lives very difficult. James placed a reassuring hand on Alex's shoulder. So do you now. More importantly, you have something they don't, the moral high ground. Emma chose you as trustee because she trusted your judgment and your principles. The Blackwoods can hire all the lawyers in the city, but they can't change that fundamental truth. The following morning brought another unexpected visitor. William Blackwood himself, standing on the front porch of the Oak Street house with an expression that mixed discomfort with determination. Alex invited him in, mindful that the children were spending the day with Gabriel's family at an ice skating rink. The house is coming along nicely, William observed, his gaze taking in the freshly painted walls, repaired floors, and modest but comfortable furnishings. We've had help from neighbors. This community takes care of its own. Yes, I can see that. William seemed genuinely intrigued by the concept, as if community support without financial transaction was a foreign concept. Why are you here, William? William sighed, removing his expensive leather gloves and tucking them into his coat pocket. Alexandra's approach yesterday was unfortunate. She allows emotion to override strategy sometimes, particularly where the children are concerned. I thought a more direct conversation might be productive. About? You know about what, Alexander? Emma's trust, the Reed Foundation. The fact that you've been appointed trustee of nearly $200 million despite having no financial expertise or philanthropic experience. Alex maintained his composure, refusing to rise to the bait. Emma seemed to think I was qualified. Her opinion is the one that matters in this case. William paced the small living room, his tall frame incongruous in the modest space. Be reasonable. The foundation could do tremendous good with proper management. Alexander and I have decades of experience with charitable organizations, board governance, investment strategy. We could ensure Emma's legacy achieves maximum impact. Emma specifically excluded you from any control over the foundation. She must have had her reasons. William's expression hardened momentarily before settling into something more conciliatory. Emma was angry with us. She believed we tried to control her life, that we didn't respect her choices. Perhaps there was some truth in that. But surely you can see that cooperation would benefit everyone involved. The children could have the best of both worlds, your values and our resources. The offer was tempting in its practicality. A truce with the Blackwoods would end the constant threat of legal battles, provide additional support for the children, and potentially increase the foundation's effectiveness through the Blackwoods' extensive network. But Alex remembered Emma's journal entries, her warnings about her parents' manipulative tactics, her fear that they would use financial leverage to influence the children's upbringing. I appreciate the offer, William, but I think it's best if we maintain the separation Emma established. The foundation will operate according to her directives, with my oversight as trustee. William's conciliatory manner evaporated, his expression turning cold. You're being stubborn and short-sighted. This isn't about your pride or some misguided loyalty to Emma's memory. This is about practical reality. The children deserve access to both sides of their heritage, the financial security and social connections we can provide, as well as whatever life lessons you believe they're learning in this environment. They have access to financial security through the foundation. As for social connections, they're building those every day with people who value them for who they are, not what family they belong to. William moved toward the door, his posture rigid with barely controlled anger. This isn't over, Alexander. Emma may have thought she was protecting her children by appointing you trustee, but she couldn't have anticipated how unsuited you are for the responsibility. The courts tend to favor what's in the best interest of the children, and two grieving grandparents with extensive resources typically present a compelling case against a single father struggling to make ends meet. The threat hung in the air as William departed, leaving Alex alone in the quiet house. The confrontation had clarified something important. The Blackwoods' interest in reconciliation had nothing to do with genuine concern for the children's well-being and everything to do with regaining control over Emma's inheritance. Their strategy had shifted from dismissing Alex as inadequate to positioning themselves as necessary partners in managing the foundation. But the underlying motivation remained the same: power and control. The remainder of the weekend passed in a blur of normal family activities: homework, meals together, a movie night with popcorn and blankets in the living room. Alex maintained a cheerful facade for the children's sake, but his mind kept returning to William's veiled threat. The Blackwoods had the resources to pursue lengthy legal action, to hire experts who would testify to the advantages of their home environment, to potentially wear him down through sheer persistence. Monday morning brought a phone call from Victoria Harris. Mr. Reed, I wanted to let you know that William Blackwood's attorney has formally requested a complete accounting of the Reed Foundation's assets and activities. They're positioning this as due diligence on behalf of the children as potential future beneficiaries. Can they do that? They can request it, but they have limited legal standing to demand it. Emma's directives were quite clear about the foundation's independence from Blackwood influence. However, this is likely just the opening move in a longer game. They're establishing a paper trail for potential future litigation. What should I do? For now, nothing. Our firm will provide the minimum legally required information while protecting the foundation's autonomy. I would, however, recommend that you formally accept the trustee position sooner rather than later. Having you officially installed as trustee will strengthen our position should this escalate. As Alex hung up, he noticed a small manila envelope that had been slipped under the front door. Inside was a single photograph. Emma on her graduation day, standing between her parents in her cap and gown, her smile bright but somehow constrained. On the back, written in Alexandra's elegant script, were the words, "She always came home in the end." The message was clear. The Blackwoods believed Emma's independence had been temporary, a youthful rebellion she would have outgrown given time. They saw Alex and the life they had built together as a detour rather than a destination, a phase rather than a choice. The realization strengthened his resolve. Emma had chosen him, chosen their life together, chosen the values they would instill in their children. Her parents' inability to accept that choice had created the very estrangement they now used as emotional leverage. That evening, as the children finished homework at the kitchen table, Alex sat with Emma's journal, seeking guidance from her words. The entry he found was dated just weeks before her death, the handwriting shaky but the thoughts clear and purposeful. "I worry about Alexander facing my parents alone. They will use every weapon in their considerable arsenal. Guilt, money, social pressure, even the legal system if necessary. They've never accepted that I chose a different path, that I rejected their definition of success in favor of one based on meaning rather than money, connection rather than collection, purpose rather than prestige. But I know Alexander's strength. It isn't loud or showy. It doesn't announce itself with grand gestures or forceful declarations. It's in his quiet integrity, his unwavering commitment to what he believes is right, his ability to stand firm when others would compromise for convenience. This is what I fell in love with all those years ago in the museum. Not just his mind or his kindness, but the core of him that remains unchanged by circumstance. The foundation will give him resources to fight if necessary, but his real power has nothing to do with money. It's in the example he sets for our children every day, teaching them through his actions that character isn't determined by comfort, that worth isn't measured by wealth, that family is defined by love rather than lineage. Mother and father will never understand this. They've spent too many years equating net worth with self-worth, social position with personal value. But the children will understand, especially if Alexander stays true to himself in the face of whatever challenges await. I've done what I can to protect them all. The rest is in his hands now, and I have absolute faith in those hands. They've held mine through the hardest moments of my life. They'll be strong enough to carry our children forward into whatever future awaits." Alex closed the journal, Emma's confidence in him a tangible weight on his shoulders. She had trusted him with not just their children's physical well-being, but with their moral and emotional inheritance, a legacy of values that money couldn't buy and status couldn't confer. The next morning, Alex called Victoria Harris and formally accepted the position of trustee for the Reed Foundation. Whatever battles lay ahead with the Blackwoods, he would face them with the full legal authority Emma had intended him to have, backed by the resources she had provided and guided by the principles they had shared. That afternoon, as Alex walked home from the bus stop after his university classes, he noticed a sleek black car idling near their house. As he approached, the back window lowered to reveal Alexandra Blackwood's perfectly composed face. "We need to talk, Alexander, about Emma's trust, about the children's future, about how we move forward from here." Alex glanced toward the house where Oliver and Sophia would be waiting under Eleanor's watchful eye, then back to Alexandra's determined expression. The coming conversation would shape their family's future in ways he couldn't yet predict. But Emma's words echoed in his mind, bolstering his resolve. Whatever the Blackwoods might offer or threaten, the path forward was clear, honoring Emma's legacy by raising their children according to the values she had cherished, using the resources she had provided to create the future she had envisioned. With a steadying breath, Alex opened the car door and stepped into the next chapter of their story. The interior of the Blackwoods luxury sedan carried the subtle scent of expensive leather and Alexandra's signature perfume. The privacy partition was raised, isolating the back seat from the driver's view. Alexandra sat with perfect posture, her hands folded precisely in her lap, every detail of her appearance meticulously controlled, a stark contrast to the emotional conversation about to unfold. "I appreciate you agreeing to speak with me, Alexander. I believe we may have approached this situation ineffectively. That's one way to put it. William and I have had extensive discussions since his visit to your home. We recognize that continuing adversarial legal action benefits no one, least of all the children. Alex studied his mother-in-law's face, searching for the manipulation behind the conciliatory words. Alexandra Blackwood had never been one to surrender advantage without securing something of greater value in return. What exactly are you proposing? A compromise. The Reed Foundation remains under your trusteeship as Emma intended. In exchange, Oliver and Sophia spend one weekend each month with us at the estate. They attend Westfield Academy, funded by the foundation, not by us, while continuing to live with you. We establish regular family dinners, perhaps once a week, to maintain connections. Everyone benefits. The children receive the educational opportunities Emma would have wanted. You maintain primary custody and decision-making authority, and William and I build a relationship with our only grandchildren. The offer was reasonable on its surface, more reasonable than Alex had expected. Yet something in Alexandra's too careful tone raised his suspicions. And if I decline? Alexandra's expression hardened almost imperceptibly. Then we proceed with a formal petition for grandparent visitation rights. Our attorneys believe we have a compelling case given the children's long-term financial interests, their mother's family history, and the unconventional circumstances of their current living situation. The barely veiled threat hung in the air between them. Alexander was offering a negotiated peace while simultaneously making clear the consequences of refusal. I need to think about this and discuss it with Oliver and Sophia. Alexandra's eyebrows rose slightly. They're children, Alexander. They're not equipped to make decisions of this magnitude. They're people, Alexandra. People whose lives were upended when they lost their mother. People who deserve some agency in what happens to them next. I won't make unilateral decisions about their relationship with you any more than I'll allow you to make unilateral decisions about their education. Alexandra studied him with new consideration, as if reassessing an opponent she had previously underestimated. You've changed since Emma's death. There's a fortitude that wasn't evident before. Grief does that. It either breaks you or forges you into something stronger. For the first time, something like genuine emotion flickered across Alexandra's carefully maintained facade. A flash of shared understanding, a momentary recognition of their common loss. Yes, it does. The car slowed to a stop in front of the house on Oak Street. Through the window, Alex could see Oliver and Sophia on the front porch with Eleanor, waiting for his return. The contrast between the children's open, eager faces and Alexandra's guarded expression crystallized something in his mind. The fundamental difference in how they viewed family itself. I'll consider your proposal and give you my answer by the end of the week. But understand this, Alexandra. I won't sacrifice the children's emotional well-being for educational prestige or social connections. Emma wouldn't have wanted that, regardless of what you believe. Alexandra nodded, her composure firmly back in place. I would expect nothing less from the man my daughter chose. We'll await your decision. The house was filled with the warm aroma of Eleanor's vegetable soup and freshly baked bread. The children greeted Alex with their usual enthusiasm, Oliver recounting a science experiment from school while Sophia showed him her latest drawing. The normality of the scene, homework spread across the kitchen table, dishes waiting to be washed, muddy shoes by the door, stood in stark contrast to the life-altering conversation he'd just concluded. After dinner, with the children occupied with a board game in the living room, Alex shared Alexandra's proposal with Eleanor and James, who had joined them for the evening meal. It sounds reasonable on the surface, James observed, his weathered hands cradling a cup of tea. Almost too reasonable. Eleanor agreed, her expression thoughtful. The Blackwoods aren't known for compromise. I wonder what they're not saying. Alex leaned back in his chair, the weight of the decision heavy on his shoulders. They want a foot in the door, regular access to the children, influence over their education. Once established, they could gradually increase their involvement, their control. Before long, the children would be spending more time at the estate than here, being shaped by Blackwood values rather than the ones Emma and I believed in. Yet there's the practical reality to consider. James pointed out gently. Westfield Academy does offer exceptional educational opportunities, and maintaining a civil relationship with the Blackwoods would spare the children the trauma of ongoing family conflict. Eleanor shook her head, her eyes sharp with concern. At what cost? Those schools teach more than academics. They instill specific values, cultivate particular worldviews. The children would be immersed in an environment that measures worth by wealth and status. Everything Emma rejected. The debate continued, circling the complex intersection of practical advantage and principled choice. As the evening progressed, Alex found himself returning to a fundamental question. What would Emma want for their children? Not just educational opportunity or family connection, but the deeper foundation of values and perspective that would shape their understanding of themselves and their place in the world. That night, after the house had quieted, Alex found himself drawn to the small box in his nightstand where he kept Emma's most personal effects: her wedding ring, the last birthday card she had given him, the hospital bracelet she had worn during her final days. Among these treasures was a sealed envelope he had never opened, marked simply, "For when you must choose." With trembling fingers, he broke the seal and unfolded the single page covered in Emma's handwriting, steadier than her final journal entries. This had been written earlier, when her mind was clear and her hand still strong. My dearest Alexander, if you're reading this, you're facing a difficult decision about our children's future. I can't know exactly what the choice entails, but I know my parents well enough to predict they'll offer something that seems reasonable, practical, advantageous, with strings attached that may not be immediately visible. Here is what I want for Oliver and Sophia. I want them to grow up knowing their value isn't determined by their bank account or social connections. I want them to recognize genuine kindness and distinguish it from manipulation. I want them to understand that integrity sometimes requires sacrificing convenience or advantage. I want them to see that real community isn't built on transactions, but on mutual care and commitment. These lessons rarely come from prestigious institutions or exclusive social circles. They come from watching the adults they love make difficult choices based on principle rather than convenience. They come from experiencing both struggle and support, from knowing what it means to work for something meaningful, from seeing firsthand that the most valuable things in life can't be purchased at any price. Trust yourself, Alexander. You know our children. You know what matters most. The path that seems most practical may not be the one that leads them toward becoming the people we hope they would be. Remember what you said to me when my parents offered you that position at Williams' company? Some costs don't appear on the balance sheet. You were right then. I suspect you're right now too. All my love, Emma. The letter brought both clarity and comfort. Emma had anticipated this moment, understood the choice he would face, and trusted his judgment. She had seen in him something he sometimes doubted in himself: the courage to choose the harder path when it aligned with their deepest values. The following morning, Alex gathered Oliver and Sophia in the living room before school. The winter sunlight filtered through the windows, casting long shadows across the floor as he explained in age-appropriate terms their grandparents' proposal. "So we go to fancy school but still live here?" Oliver clarified, his analytical mind immediately grasping the practical aspects. "Yes, and you'd spend one weekend each month with your grandparents at their house." Sophia's expression grew troubled, her fingers fidgeting with the edge of her sweater. "Would we have to go alone, without you?" "That would be the arrangement, yes." The children exchanged a look, one of those wordless communications that had developed between them since Emma's death. "I don't want to go to a different school," Oliver said finally. "I like Jefferson. My friends are there. And the math team, me too." Sophia agreed. "Ms. Rivera says I can be in the special art program next year if I keep improving. And grandmother always makes me feel like I'm doing everything wrong." The simplicity of their responses, untainted by consideration of long-term advantages or social prestige, cut through the complexity that had been clouding Alex's thinking. While he had been weighing educational opportunities against family values, the children were evaluating the proposal based on what actually contributed to their happiness and well-being. "What if Grandma and Grandpa get mad if we say no?" Sophia asked, her voice small with worry. Alex pulled his children close, their small bodies warm against his sides. "That's for me to handle, not you. Your job is to be honest about what you want and how you feel. My job is to make the decision that's best for our family and deal with the consequences." Later that morning, Alex called Victoria Harris to discuss the legal implications of declining the Blackwoods offer. The conversation was sobering. While the Blackwoods case for grandparent visitation wasn't guaranteed success, the litigation would be lengthy, expensive, and potentially damaging to the children's emotional well-being. In most states, grandparents need to prove that visitation is in the children's best interest and that denial would cause them harm. Victoria explained. The Blackwoods would likely argue that depriving Oliver and Sophia of their cultural heritage, family connections, and the educational opportunities they can provide constitutes harm. Would they succeed? It's difficult to predict. Courts generally presume that parents act in their children's best interest, but the Blackwoods have resources to present a compelling case. They could bring in experts to testify about the advantages of their involvement, perhaps even suggest that your rejection of their reasonable offer demonstrates a pattern of alienation that isn't serving the children well. And if I counteroffer, perhaps supervise visits here, rather than weekends at the estate, that might strengthen your position. It shows willingness to maintain the family connection while protecting the children's stability and routine. Courts generally favor compromise over complete estrangement when it comes to extended family relationships. The conversation confirmed what Alex had already suspected, that declining the Blackwoods offer outright would trigger a legal battle that would drain his energy and resources, regardless of the foundation's financial support. A counter-proposal might provide a middle path, one that maintained boundaries while avoiding unnecessary conflict. That afternoon, Alex arranged to meet Alexandra at a neutral location, a quiet tea room downtown that offered privacy without the power dynamics of either home territory. Alexandra arrived precisely on time, dressed in understated elegance that still managed to convey wealth and status. Thank you for meeting me, Alexandra. I've given your proposal careful consideration. And? The word hung between them, Alexandra's tone carefully neutral, though her eyes betrayed her tension. I can't accept it as offered. The children are thriving in their current school environment, with friends and activities that provide stability during a difficult time. Uprooting them to attend Westfield, regardless of its academic advantages, would disrupt the social connections that have helped them process their grief. Alexandra's lips thinned with disappointment, but she remained silent, waiting for him to continue. However, I recognize the importance of maintaining their relationship with you and William. I propose an alternative, monthly family dinners at our home on Oak Street, where you can spend time with Oliver and Sophia in their environment. Occasional day visits to the estate, perhaps once every 2 months, with me present, at least initially. As the children become more comfortable, we can reevaluate the arrangement. Alexandra studied him carefully, weighing his counteroffer against her expectations. And their education? Jefferson Middle School hardly prepares them for the opportunities their heritage should afford them. The Reed Foundation can fund enrichment activities beyond what Jefferson offers. Private music lessons, advanced art instruction for Sophia, additional math and science programs for Oliver. They get the educational enhancement without sacrificing the community that's helped them heal. Alexandra's expression revealed her internal calculation. How much to concede, how much to demand, where the true priorities lay in this negotiation. William won't be satisfied with such limited access to the children. He had hoped to begin introducing Oliver to the family business, to prepare him for eventually taking his place in the Blackwood legacy. Oliver is 10 years old, Alexandra. He deserves a childhood before being groomed as William's successor if, when he's older, he expresses interest in the family business. That would be his choice to make. But I won't commit him to a path before he's old enough to understand what it means. The implication was clear. Alex wouldn't sacrifice his son's autonomy to fulfill William's dynastic ambitions. The boundary was non-negotiable. Alexandra sipped her tea, buying time to recalibrate her approach. When she spoke again, her voice carried a note of genuine curiosity beneath the practiced poise. You truly believe this modest life you've created is better for them than what we can provide? The connections, the opportunities, the security? I believe what matters most isn't what we give our children, but what we teach them. Oliver and Sophia are learning resilience, community, the value of hard work, and the importance of genuine relationships. Those lessons will serve them better than any social connection or financial advantage. Emma said something similar once. Alexandra admitted, a rare moment of vulnerability breaking through her composed exterior. When she refused the position William arranged at the gallery, she said she'd rather earn her place through merit than receive it through nepotism. I thought it was youthful idealism that she'd outgrow. I never understood it was a fundamental difference in values. Alex saw an opening, a chance to bridge the chasm of understanding that had separated Emma from her parents and now threatened to extend to the next generation. Emma loved you, Alexandra. She was grateful for the privileges she had growing up, but she wanted to define success on her own terms, to build a life based on meaning rather than status. That's the legacy she wanted for Oliver and Sophia, the freedom to determine their own values rather than inheriting them without question. For a moment, Alexandra's carefully maintained facade faltered, revealing the grief she typically kept hidden beneath layers of control and composure. I miss her every day. The children are all we have left of her. They're not extensions of Emma, Alexandra. They're their own people, with their own paths to discover. Loving them means supporting who they are becoming, not just preserving who they remind you of. The truth of the statement hung between them, uncomfortable but necessary. Alexandra straightened her shoulders, her moment of vulnerability passing as quickly as it had appeared. I'll discuss your counter-proposal with William. I make no promises about his receptiveness, but I will advocate for giving it serious consideration. As Alexandra gathered her belongings to leave, she paused, her expression uncharacteristically uncertain. One question, Alexander. If the foundation hadn't existed, if you were truly struggling financially as we believed, would your decision be different at the Eviction? Alex considered the question honestly, understanding its importance. The financial security changes our practical circumstances, but not our values. Even without the foundation, I would prioritize the children's emotional well-being over educational prestige or social advantage. Money, or the lack of it, doesn't determine what matters most. Alexandra nodded, accepting his answer with unexpected grace. Emma chose well. The simple statement, the closest thing to approval Alexandra had ever offered, lingered in the air as she departed, leaving Alex with the sense that something fundamental had shifted in their relationship. Not resolution, not yet, but perhaps the beginning of understanding. The following weeks brought a tentative new pattern to their lives. The Blackwoods accepted Alex's counter-proposal, albeit with evident reluctance on William's part. The first family dinner at the Oak Street house was awkward. Alexandra clearly uncomfortable in the modest surroundings, William struggling to connect with grandchildren who remained wary of his formal manner. But as the evening progressed, small moments of genuine connection emerged. William, discovering Oliver's fascination with architecture, shared stories about historic buildings he had helped preserve through his real estate developments. Alexandra, watching Sophia sketch, offered gentle observations about composition and perspective that revealed her own hidden appreciation for art. By the third such dinner a month later, the initial stiffness had given way to something resembling comfortable familiarity. The children approached their grandparents with less caution, Oliver proudly showing William his math competition medals, Sophia seeking Alexandra's opinion on her latest paintings. The Blackwoods, in turn, made visible efforts to engage with the children on their terms rather than imposing expectations or judgments. The first-day visit to the Blackwood estate revealed similar progress. Though initially overwhelmed by the mansion's grandeur, Oliver and Sophia gradually relaxed as Alex remained steadily present, a buffer against old tensions and unspoken expectations. William gave them a tour of the grounds, showing particular patience with Sophia's endless questions about the garden. Alexandra had arranged a small art exhibition in the conservatory, not of valuable masterpieces from their collection, but of Emma's childhood drawings and paintings, preserved with the same care as their most expensive acquisitions. She was talented even then, Alexandra said softly as they studied a watercolor Emma had painted at 12, a simple scene of the estate's garden in spring, rendered with surprising skill for such a young artist. Sophia has her eye for detail. Alex agreed, watching his daughter examine her mother's work with intense concentration. And her determination, Alexandra added, a note of pride warming her typically modulated voice. Emma would paint the same subject dozens of times until she captured it exactly as she saw it in her mind. Sophia has that same persistence. The acknowledgement that Emma's positive qualities lived on in her children seemed to ease something in Alexandra. For perhaps the first time, she was seeing Oliver and Sophia not just as extensions of the Blackwood legacy or reminders of her lost daughter, but as individuals with their own unique combinations of inherited traits and developing personalities. As winter gave way to spring, The Reed Foundation began taking more concrete shape under Alex's guidance. With Victoria Harris's help, he established clear priorities aligned with Emma's values: educational access for underserved communities, arts programs for disadvantaged youth, community development initiatives that emphasize self-determination rather than dependence. The Foundation's first major grant funded a comprehensive after-school program at Jefferson Middle School, providing resources that benefited not just Oliver and Sophia, but all their classmates. The house on Oak Street blossomed along with the season. The garden Alex had started the previous year expanded, with Eleanor's expert guidance and the children's enthusiastic assistance. The interior renovations continued, room by room, each improvement making the space more truly their own. The neighborhood's collective efforts had transformed what was once a neglected property into a warm, welcoming home that reflected the family's journey from crisis to recovery. One evening in late April, as Alex sat on the front porch watching Oliver and Sophia play with the neighborhood friends in the yard, James Chen joined him, settling into the adjacent chair with the careful movements of advancing age. "You've built something remarkable here, Alexander. Not just the house, but the life inside it." Alex smiled, watching his son teach Miguel Santos the finer points of pitching a baseball, while Sophia and several other children created an elaborate chalk mural on the sidewalk. "We built it together, the children, the neighbors, friends like you and Eleanor. I couldn't have done it alone. That's precisely what makes it remarkable. The Blackwoods measure success by individual achievement, wealth accumulated, status attained, power exercised. You measure it by connection, community, shared purpose. The children are learning that lesson every day, not through lectures, but through lived experience." The observation resonated with something Alex had been reflecting on recently: the profound difference between knowing principles intellectually and embodying them through action. Oliver and Sophia weren't just hearing about values like generosity, resilience, and community. They were witnessing them in practice and participating in their expression. "Do you think Emma would be proud of what we've created here?" James's weathered face softened with certainty. "Without question. This is exactly what she hoped for, not just material security, but a life rich in meaning and connection. The foundation provides resources, but the true inheritance she left her children is the example you're setting together. That a good life isn't measured by what you have, but by who you become and how you care for others." The conversation was interrupted by the arrival of a sleek black car, different from the Blackwoods' usual vehicle. A young man in a driver's uniform emerged, approached the porch, and handed Alex an envelope before returning to the car without a word. Inside was a formal invitation to a charity gala hosted by the Blackwood Foundation, along with a handwritten note from Alexandra. "We would be honored if you and the children would attend as our guests. This is an important event for the family, and your presence would mean a great deal to us. Perhaps it's time the community met Emma's family as it truly is, not divided by grief and misunderstanding, but united in her memory." The invitation represented more than a social engagement. It was Alexandra's public acknowledgement of Alex and the children as legitimate members of the Blackwood family circle. After months of gradual relationship building through private dinners and visits, she was offering formal recognition in the social world she valued most highly. "I wasn't expecting this," Alex admitted, showing the invitation to James. The older man studied it thoughtfully. "It's a significant gesture. Alexandra is essentially declaring to her entire social circle that you and the children are acknowledged family members, not estranged relations to be hidden away. Should we accept? That depends on what you want the children to learn from the experience. There's value in understanding the world the Blackwoods inhabit, even if it's not the world you choose to center your lives around. Knowledge without judgment, exposure without absorption, these can broaden perspective without compromising values." The gala was held at the city's most prestigious hotel. The grand ballroom transformed into an elegant showcase of wealth and influence. Alex felt distinctly out of place despite his rented tuxedo, but Oliver and Sophia approached the event with the natural adaptability of children, curious about the unfamiliar surroundings, but grounded in their own sense of self. Alexandra met them in the lobby, her expression showing genuine pleasure at their arrival. "You all look wonderful. Thank you for coming. This means a great deal to William and me." The ballroom glittered with chandeliers, the assembled guests representing the city's financial and social elite. As Alexandra led them through the crowd, Alex noted the curious glances, the whispered comments behind discreet hands. The Blackwoods' estranged son-in-law, and grandchildren were clearly objects of interest in this rarefied environment. William Blackwood stood near the stage, deep in conversation with several distinguished-looking men. His face registered surprise followed by pleasure when he spotted their approach. Oliver, Sophia, welcome to your first Blackwood Foundation Gala. And Alexander, thank you for bringing them. I wasn't certain you would accept the invitation. We thought it was important for the children to understand all aspects of their heritage. Alex replied, his hand resting protectively on Sophia's shoulder as she gazed wide-eyed at the elaborate decorations and elegant crowd. The evening progressed with formal speeches, lavish dinner service, and carefully orchestrated social interactions. Alex watched with a mixture of amusement and pride as his children navigated the unfamiliar protocols with remarkable grace. Sophia charming elderly patrons with her earnest questions about art, Oliver engaging in surprisingly sophisticated conversation with a university president about educational philosophy. As the formal program concluded, William approached Alex at their table, his expression uncharacteristically uncertain. I'd like to show the children something if you'll permit it. There's an exhibition in the mezzanine gallery that I think would interest them. Alex hesitated briefly before nodding his assent. The gradual building of trust over recent months had earned William this small measure of faith. The mezzanine gallery had been transformed into a memorial exhibition. Emma Blackwood Reed, A Life in Art. Displayed with museum-quality lighting and professional curation were dozens of Emma's works, from childhood sketches to her final paintings. Each piece was accompanied by a small plaque providing context and commentary, creating a comprehensive narrative of her artistic development and personal journey. Oliver and Sophia moved through the exhibition in stunned silence, absorbing this unexpected window into their mother's life and talent. Alex felt equally overwhelmed, recognizing familiar pieces that had hung in their home alongside works he had never seen, paintings from before they met, sketches from her student days, even recent works he hadn't known existed. William stood slightly apart, watching their reactions with careful attention. Alexandra and I have been collecting Emma's art since she was a child. After her passing, we discovered additional pieces in her studio at the estate, works she had created during her visits home but left behind. We thought perhaps this would be a way to share her with you, to help the children understand the woman she was before she became their mother. The gesture was unexpectedly thoughtful, revealing a depth of sentiment beneath William's typically pragmatic exterior. He had found a way to share Emma with her children that transcended the tensions and disagreements that had characterized their family relationships. This is remarkable, William. Thank you for doing this, Alex said, genuinely moved by the effort and care evident in the exhibition. William nodded, uncharacteristic emotion briefly visible in his expression. She was remarkable, stubborn, idealistic, determined to forge her own path, but remarkable nonetheless. I didn't always understand her choices, but I never doubted her conviction or her talent. As they continued through the exhibition, they reached a section dedicated to Emma's final works, paintings created during her illness, when her body was failing, but her creative vision remained clear. Among them was a triptych titled simply Legacy, 3 panels depicting the same landscape from different perspectives. The first showed the view from the Blackwood estate, grand and formal. The second captured the garden of the brownstone where Alex and Emma had raised their children. The third panel revealed a scene Alex didn't recognize, a modest house on a tree-lined street, surrounded by a vibrant community garden where adults and children worked together. She painted this just weeks before she passed, William explained quietly. I didn't understand it at the time. Now I think perhaps she was showing us something important. Different versions of home, different kinds of legacy. The third panel confused me most of all, since it wasn't any place I recognized. But looking at it now, it's Oak Street, Alex realized with sudden clarity. Or what Oak Street has become. The community garden we started last month looks almost exactly like this. William studied the painting with newfound understanding. She saw it before it existed. She envisioned the home you would create together, even when she knew she wouldn't be there to share it. The realization was both heartbreaking and profoundly comforting. Emma had somehow foreseen not just the challenges they would face after her death, but the new life they would eventually build. The path that had seemed so uncertain to Alex had been clear in Emma's vision, a future she had helped create even as her own time grew short. As the evening drew to a close, Alexandra joined them in the gallery, her typical composure softened by the emotional context of the exhibition. The foundation would like to establish a permanent scholarship in Emma's name for young artists from disadvantaged backgrounds. We thought perhaps the Reed Foundation might consider a matching grant, our two families working together to continue Emma's legacy in a meaningful way. The offer represented more than a philanthropic collaboration. It was an acknowledgement that Emma's legacy belonged to both families, that her values could be honored through cooperation rather than conflict. Alexander was extending an olive branch, not surrender, not complete acceptance of Alex's approach to raising the children, but a genuine attempt to find common ground. I think Emma would like that very much. Alex agreed, recognizing the significance of the moment. As they prepared to leave, William drew Alex aside for a private word. I've been thinking about our earlier disagreements. Perhaps I was too quick to assume that wealth and social position were the only advantages worth securing for the children. Watching them tonight, their confidence, their thoughtfulness, their genuine interest in others, I'm beginning to understand what you and Emma valued beyond material success. It wasn't a complete concession, but it represented significant movement from William's previous rigid position. The acknowledgement that character and values might be as important as financial security and social connection marked a potential turning point in their relationship. They're extraordinary children, William, not because of their potential inheritance or social connections, but because of who they are becoming as people. That's what Emma cared about most. Not what they would have, but who they would be. William nodded, a flash of regret crossing his features. I wish I had understood that better while she was with us. Perhaps there would have been fewer arguments, less estrangement, more time together. The admission of regret, so uncharacteristic of William's typically unapologetic demeanor, revealed the grief he usually kept carefully contained beneath his businesslike exterior. For all their differences in values and approach, Alex and William shared the profound loss of the woman who had connected them, and in that shared loss, perhaps the beginning of genuine understanding could take root. 2 years after moving to Oak Street, the Reed family gathered in their backyard for a celebration. The once neglected house now stood transformed, not into a showplace of wealth or status, but into a warm, welcoming home that reflected the journey its inhabitants had traveled together. The garden bloomed with vegetables and flowers, many transplanted from Emma's original garden at the brownstone. The newly built studio at the back of the property housed Sophia's growing collection of artwork alongside preserved pieces of Emma's that Alexandra had gifted to the children. Friends and neighbors filled the yard, Eleanor directing food preparation with military precision, James engaging a group of children with historical stories, Gabriel Santos and his family setting up tables and chairs. Rebecca Morgan arrived with a group of teachers from Jefferson, where Oliver and Sophia continued to thrive academically and socially. Even the Blackwoods were present, William somewhat stiff, but making visible efforts to engage with the other guests. Alexandra more relaxed than Alex had ever seen her, helping Sophia arrange her artwork for display. The occasion was the official launch of the Emma Reed Community Arts Center, a joint project of the Reed Foundation and the Blackwood Foundation, housed in a renovated building just blocks from Jefferson Middle School. The center would provide arts education, exhibition space for emerging artists, and community gathering areas, all free of charge to neighborhood residents. It represented the vision Emma had painted in her final triptych, a community united across differences of wealth and background, engaged in creating something meaningful together. As Alex watched his children move confidently among the guests, Oliver explaining the center's architecture to an interested neighbor, Sophia proudly showing Alexandra her latest paintings, he felt Emma's presence more strongly than he had since her death, not as a ghost or a memory, but as a continuing influence, a set of values and visions made manifest through the lives they were building. Victoria Harris approached, a rare smile softening her typically professional demeanor. Emma would be proud of what you've accomplished, Mr. Reed. Not just the foundation or the arts center, but the family you've nurtured through extraordinary circumstances. Alex nodded, watching as William Blackwood awkwardly but sincerely complimented Eleanor on her garden design, a small but significant bridging of worlds that would have seemed impossible 2 years earlier. We're still figuring it out day by day. The Blackwoods and I will never agree completely on parenting philosophy or values, but we found a way to give Olivis and Sophia the best of both worlds: financial security and social connection from their grandparents, grounding in community and service from our life here. A compromise Emma herself might have engineered. Victoria observed. She always did have a talent for seeing the bigger picture, for understanding how seemingly opposed perspectives might ultimately serve a common purpose. As the gathering continued into evening, lanterns illuminating the yard with warm golden light, Alex found himself on the porch steps with Oliver and Sophia, taking a momentary break from the celebration. In the distance, they could see the lights of downtown, the Blackwood Tower rising above other buildings, its presence no longer threatening, but simply part of the landscape that formed their expanded world. "Do you think Mom knew we'd end up here?" Sophia asked, leaning comfortably against Alex's side. "In this house? With these people?" Alex thought about Emma's final painting, the vision of Oak Street she had somehow foreseen. He thought about the trust she had established, the letters she had written, the path she had helped create, even knowing she wouldn't walk it with them. "I think she hoped we would find our way to something like this. Not the exact circumstances, perhaps, but the essentials. A home built on love rather than luxury, a community based on genuine connection, a life rich in meaning and purpose." Oliver, ever practical, considered this thoughtfully. So the money was just to make sure we could choose our own path, not to make us rich, but to give us freedom? Exactly. Your mother understood something important, that true wealth isn't measured in dollars, but in the quality of our connections, the depth of our experiences, and the impact of our choices. Money is just a tool. What matters is what you build with it. As they rejoined the celebration, Alex carried the warm certainty that Emma would indeed be proud, not of the foundation's assets or the Arts Center's facilities, but of the family that had emerged from crisis stronger and more resilient, guided by her vision, but finding their own way forward. Together they had discovered what Emma had known all along, that the most valuable inheritance wasn't the one measured in millions, but the legacy of love, courage, and purpose that no amount of money could buy or replace. The secret of legacy wasn't hidden in trust documents or legal arrangements. It lived in the daily choices that shape character, in the values passed from parent to child, in the courage to prioritize what truly matters when tested by circumstance. Emma had left them not just financial security, but a roadmap to a life of meaning. And in following that map, they had found their way home.